Did you get that? You know, I tell you, if my old man would call and say, dude, we got an 8-week tour to go, you know, you might have to take over this gavel. I'm kidding. We got up, welcome, Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. We're going to go with Senate File 4197. That would be Maye Quade. Come on down. You're the new contestant on The Price is Right. Medical assistance for employed persons with disabilities modification. I think Rob Woodlick, is he in there? He's coming. Come on down. Huh?
Hi. Good to see you.
Oh, really? Brittany Wilson is here too. Welcome back, you two. Senator, welcome to the committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for agreeing to hear Senate File 4197. Senate File 4197 will do two things: extend the premium review period or renewal period for employed persons with disabilities enrolled in MA from 6 months to 12 months. And the second is extend the time period that MA enrollees have to report changes in income or household size from 10 days to 30 days. By removing the renewal timeline from twice a year to once a year, this bill will eliminate redundant documentation and provide both applicants and applicant processors more time to review materials and ensure accuracy. This bill is really simple. I urge a yes vote, and I will turn it over to my two testifiers.
Thank you very much, Senator. Rob, Brittany, who's going to go first?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So, you know, really this program has allowed myself and Brittany and many others with disabilities that receive home care and critical services to keep us going, able to work and keep those benefits. You know, it was created 20 years ago, and there hasn't been much change since last year when we were able to eliminate the asset elimination, but there's still a lot of work to be done. We're hoping to, you know, adjust the premium schedule or eliminate it at some point soon. You know, and the administrative changes that this bill makes really are going to make a huge difference. I've lost benefits a few times temporarily because, you know, you get the packet and it's due in 2 days. Well, you spend half a day filling it out, and then you go and drop it off or mail it in, and then it doesn't get processed in time. So then you spend another week trying to get your benefits back. Well, it's just a huge headache. And so, you know, I've had times where I couldn't get home care. You know, and I'm not alone. Most of my friends that are on this program have dealt with the same thing. And doing this packet twice a year, it's quite a bit. You have to go to the bank, you have to find all your records, you have to get special letters, and it's not a very straightforward process, as, you know, maybe it was thought up to be, but, you know, imagine having to go track down every single one of your assets and then reporting that twice a year and having up-to-date records. So it's quite a bit of a burden to do. So hopefully we can only do this once a year going forward. So.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rob. You know, that said, this whole thing, thank you, Senator Maye Quade, thank you for taking on these systems things that we talk about are discriminatory. And this is one example of where that just absolutely, why did we set a system up where you have to prove and prove and prove and prove that you still have a unique and individualized need? And I'm grateful that this committee, you're hearing that you're bringing this stuff forward. Now we just got to get it right. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's the presumption that's built into laws like this that people who are on MA are committing some sort of fraud by needing services, and it's really offensive. And you're right, it's something that we can continue to do and chip away at. And I appreciate the advocates bringing it to me because that's how we learn about these things. So, thank you.
yeah.
Well, and what you see on the law language is nothing what we see on a consumer level. It's way more intense. So.
I remember having conversations, Rob, Senator Utke, I mean, there's we were part of this conversation about, well, when it comes down to reassessing or something, you're going to live with something the rest of your life. Therefore, nothing really, why should you have to go keep proving you live. It's just beyond, and I have a lived experience for that, and I get it, and I appreciate your testimony on that. Brittany, nice to see you. Welcome back.
Yes, good to see you too, and good afternoon, Chair Hoffman and committee members. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify on Senate File 4197. As you stated, my name is Brittany Hernandez-Wilson. I live in St. Paul and work as the Equity and Justice Director for the ARC Minnesota. I am truly grateful for medical assistance for employed persons with disabilities, and I'm proud to say that that being on MAEPD has allowed me to work earning competitive wages for nearly 15 years. And in these 15 years, I've come to know MAEPD very well. As you may know, a part of staying enrolled in MAEPD requires that enrollees must reapply every 6 months. This means reconfirming everything about me, including all of my assets, all of my bank accounts, retirement accounts, etc., even if nothing changed. And it takes a lot of time, as Rob and others have said, to compile all of these documents. I also have to locate a printer and go to the post office to get certified mail so that I have proof that I sent my paperwork in, a precaution I take as a well-seasoned recipient of this program. And it's a very tense time because my whole entire life and livelihood really depends on being in this program. And if I don't turn the information on time, then everything really is in jeopardy. Take my past renewal, for instance. In December, I received notice that at the beginning of January, my renewal papers were due. I felt like it was too soon. I had just sent them in this past August. So I called my case manager and found out that that actually was a mistake. My paperwork was not due until February. I was relieved about that because I happened to get COVID in January and was housebound for almost 2 weeks, which meant that I wouldn't make that original deadline that I was told to turn in my paperwork. Once I was COVID-free, I went and printed out all of my paperwork and got it sent in before the correct due date. And I was feeling good. I talked to my case manager again, and she assured me that everything was great. They had received my paperwork and my health care would not relapse. On February 1st, I received a letter confirming that my health care had been renewed, which is an incredible feeling, and because nothing had changed, my premium had stayed the exact same. Things went well for about 2 weeks until I received another letter on February 16th notifying me that in fact my health care would not be renewed because they had not received my paperwork. At the time, I was returning back from vacation and only had about 24 hours to make things right or else my health care would be canceled. This is a situation that no one wants to be in. I did what you're supposed to do. I called my county case manager and let them know that I received this letter and that I was very confused. Because of the time constraints, I also called the Ramsey County Help Desk line, and the person that answered my call did not seem very happy to be there. I let them know about the letters that I had received and the confusion. They explained to me that the county had reviewed my paperwork and received it, but that it was not updated in one of the systems that it needed to be. I had asked some clarifying questions to make sure that I understood what was being said, and the person who answered replied with, "Did you just hear what I said?" in that tone. It was very frustrating as someone who has been in the system in some capacity since I was born, who has done these renewals every 6 months, even though most of the time nothing changes. And to be received with such hostility was really upsetting. Thankfully, I am an advocate and I'm not gonna stop at someone's bad attitude, but I think about what would have happened if English were not my preferred language, if I didn't know or understand the language of the system, or that it was my right to ask clarifying questions. What would have happened then? Thankfully, a few days later, everything got worked out, but the situation still sits fresh in my mind. It's frustrating to have to work so hard just to receive these life-saving benefits, every 6 months to have to turn in everything about me just so I can be reconfirmed as someone who is disabled that can still be on these programs, especially if nothing changes. I really wanted to just say that because of MAEPD, I am thriving, working as an advocate in my community. Every day I get to live my passion, making a difference, and that is a big deal, truly. I know the power of this program and its ability to provide life-giving opportunities for people with disabilities who need waiver-level support and are able to work. And I also know that it wasn't anything malicious that my paperwork didn't get handled in the correct manner, that often these systems are overburdened when you have thousands of people who are reapplying. So I just wanted to say that as well. And that's why I urge you to support Senate File 4197, which would extend the renewal period to 12 months as long as there are no changes. And it would also give us more time to fill out the paperwork if we have changes like a new job or people, living with us. We can make this process smoother and more accessible to the Minnesotans who access this program. We can help relieve the burden that the processors and case managers go through to reprocess this paperwork. And we can put trust in the recipients of this program to apply yearly unless there are changes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Why do we have to even every 12 months prove that you still live with something? Right? I'm just this beyond. I mean, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. I mean, why? Did you look at going 24 months, 36 months?
Mr. Chair, I would be in favor of an amendment that just says within 30 days of something changing. If nothing's changed, it seems ridiculous. Does that sound?
No, this is bringing back some post-traumatic stress early on. I mean, it's like every 6 months had to just keep, getting the paperwork filled out. Look, I live with X. I'm going to live with X the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Nothing's going to change. I mean, it was the former assistant commissioner once told me we spend $250 million in assessments in the state of Minnesota. It's like, okay, why? I mean, it's more of a question than anything else. But are we going to lay this over for possible inclusion? I see you have what is known. Do you see the fiscal note, Senator Mann? Do you want to say something?
I just wanted to chime in on that particular point. I mean, if you have a note from your doctor that says this is a permanent condition, then within 30 days, if there is a change, would make more sense, right?
Yeah.
Senator Utke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm hearing good suggestions here. One other thing as I'm listening to them testify and tell their stories, are you able to communicate with the department via email if it's your choice? I'm hearing you spend money on certified mail, and we know the speed of mail nowadays. I mean, there's a lot of challenges that are baked into this that they don't need. I don't know if that's an option, but if it's however they could communicate that. We are in a modern world where electronic communications are there right now if you want to use them.
Rob Woodlick.
So there is, kind of this backdoor online form thing that I didn't know about. Our working group we're like, well, why can't you just do online forms? Because that would make it easier. It's county by county too, so you can download the forms from DHS, right, or HHS, and then, but you still have to send them to the county. So it's typically fax because, the privacy email system, there's the whole kind of encryption thing that doesn't happen with emails, so.
Ms. Wilson.
Yeah, so in my experience, there have been some case managers or financial case managers that I've been able to email with, but it takes a while. I emailed my case manager the very same day I received this letter, and they were not able to respond to me until a week later. I also want to mention that whenever you send in paperwork, it takes on average 10 days for the county, for it to be scanned in and for them to receive it. I don't know if it's faster if we're sending it electronically, but that's the disclaimer that you receive when you send in any paperwork.
Thank you. There's Senator Utke, and then Jillian Nelson had her hand up on Zoom, so let's go ahead. Do you want her to?
Mr. Chair, let's just, it isn't going to help this bill at this time, but let's take this conversation to the next step. How many different things do we have to sign up for and approved through different things in life, certificates and licenses that we have, that when we go online, we pull up the last one, and now you put in the new date, it's preloaded, and you just fill in changes, and then you hit send again. Something that we should look at for, as we work forward on this, to make it as easy as possible to be able to communicate, because to start over each time with the whole form, that seems cumbersome and things that we shouldn't have to tackle. And you're liking that $0 fiscal note, aren't you?
You speaking of forms, we got this. Let's go to Ms. Nelson. You're on Zoom. I want you, for the record, introduce us and enter into the conversation.
Good afternoon, Chair Hoffman and committee members. I'm Jillian Nelson. I'm the Community Resource and Policy Advocate for the Autism Society of Minnesota, and also an MAPD user. I apologize for not being there in person. I am ridiculously sick, and I want to keep all my germs away from all of you fine folks. I had an entire testimony prepared, but in all honesty, Brittany and Rob shared a lot of it. I just want to point out a couple additional points. The requalification that we're referencing, it's not necessarily our disability recertification that goes through another line, but this is our financial recertification, which is almost more absurd than having to recertify our disabilities, because MAEPD has no income limit or asset limit. So we are being required to submit over 60 pages of paperwork twice a year to prove that we financially qualify for a program with no financial limitations. Honestly, this is
Did
a
you say,
waste of.
wait, Jillian, did you say 60 pages of paper? 60
I
pieces?
just sent mine in on March 8th, and with all of my bank account statements and everything, it came to over 60 pages of paper. Wow. To prove that I financially qualify for a program with no financial limitations, and that the counties, who are completely backlogged on everything else, are taking the time to process these 60 pages of paper to prove that we income qualify for a program with no income qualification or asset limit. It's just, there's no other word for this but absurd and ridiculous. And this can change that. This can ease burden off the counties. This can ease burden off people with disabilities, because it's so redundant and unnecessary.
Thank you guys for doing this. This is absolutely lowering it. Anybody else? 60 pages there, Dr. Mann, Senator Dr. Mann. Well, I want to go see you in the emergency room in Northfield Hospital, and you make me fill out 60 pages of paper. That would be just me. I love it. Thank you, too. Thank you, too. You really are making some things happen, and I appreciate everything you've done on MAEPD, everything you're doing on TEFRA. It brings joy to me, and I just appreciate you bringing this kind of stuff to our committee. So, am I missing anything? I think we're going to lay this over for inclusion in the omnibus bill, but there is a fiscal note to this, and it's Senator Utke's favorite kind of fiscal note. It's got zero impact. I love that. So
Thank you. Well, Mr. Chair, I want to offer what could be an amendment when we put together our omnibus. If you go to line 2.31,
yeah,
this paragraph could say, any required premium shall be determined at application and redetermined, strike at the, everything up to or, and then just like or when a change in household size or income is reported, and then it must be reported within 30 days. The annual reporting.
well, you want to do that
seems
now, or you want to
ridiculous.
wait till we mark it up? I mean, you seem to have.
Well, let's do it now. And there would be a positive fiscal note, because I bet you we'd save staff time. That's my guess. An even better fiscal note, saving money.
Members, are you good? Oral amendment? You want to say that again so Liam gets what you're saying? And
On 2.31, any required premium shall be determined application and redetermined, strike at the, and then everything through or. It picks up when a change in income or household size is reported. I think I've captured that.
Senator, if you look at 3.6, that same language is there, what would you like to do with that? Just get rid of, until the next review?
Yeah, to the next review.
This is good. This is called fixing in committee.
Liam
This is
looks
why committee exists.
unsure about that change. I'm reading his face, but it is good. Except for the changes occurring for the change resulting in increased premium shall not affect the premium amount until the next.
Senator Mann,
Mr. Chair, we could also, now that we have this idea, we can just.
Yeah, do it when we mark it up.
Yeah.
I will take that advice from my colleague, and I'll have a good answer by the time we mark up the bill for the second part. Do the first part.
do the first part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Leonard, if you say, yeah, Senator Archie, I think we got something on it. Senator, you good? All right. Okay, let's just wait 20 seconds.
Oh.
I'm okay. This is where we need some bumper music.
My nickname for my mother is Patience, because I have none. She wanted me to have something related to patience,
Time and
so she
patience.
nicknamed me Patience.
Do you know, we have a president of the Senate who was nominated for a Grammy. You think he could like give us some, go ahead, Senator Archie, you're being serious here.
Well, I can tell you what I'm thinking, and I think that's what Liam's probably looking at too, is when we looked at this language, it starts out by talking about the premium. That's the moving part. And then we get to the redetermination part of it, to be redetermined. That's the part I think you're wanting to cut out, because the redetermined would mean every in this case, every 6 months it was being changed. That's that look at part. The premium is the part, that cost is across the board, and that could move. So I think you'd need to, the redetermined is what she's wanting to cut out maybe, but. I mean,
I think we're on that.
Yep.
That's the complete argument.
yeah.
That's,
So-
my understanding is that's been the complete argument of this, is
but
why
that
do they
was-
have to be redetermined every 6
That
months?
part
every
was
12
still
months?
included,
Okay,
but
all right. I'm okay on time. I'm fine. Time and patience is all I got.
I'll have a nickname of Patience. Mr. Chair, I think the issue on lines 3.4 to 3.6
Yep.
is that right now, if there's an increased premium, it doesn't take effect until the next review.
Okay.
And if we don't have that review, when would the increase premium take effect?
Yeah, that's a question more than anything else. It's, Mr. Liam Monahan.
Mr. Chair, Senator Maye Quade, maybe the thing to do on page 3, line 6, is to strike the new language, delete the new language, strike review, and insert redetermination. The word redetermination would then refer back to the first part of the sentence where it says any required premium shall be redetermined when a change in income or household size is reported.
Jillian had her hand up.
Well, reported or occurs.
Until the next redetermination.
Nice job.
And I think Jillian has her hand up as well.
Miss Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Hoffman. As it stands now, our premiums are actually redetermined if our benefit, or if our income or our household size changes. That happens automatically. That's why we're required to report it within 10 days and why we're asking for the extension of 30 days. So even if there isn't a renewal, we still have to report that change in income immediately, and the premium does automatically change.
Okay.
It changes effective the next month.
That's good.
I don't think that's right.
Senator.
Well, Mr. Chair, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Mr. Monahan's suggestion. I'm also going to look at, the lines on 3.2. It says a decreased premium is available the next billing month. If an increased premium is also taking place that next billing month, we could just add that in there as well. By the time we mark up our bill, I will have a clear answer on the process. I think for now, we could just do that first striking, knowing that leaves our bill a little wonky.
All right, so you're going to come back when we do mark this up with the other two changes, but the first change will be the very first thing that Mr. Monahan put together. So that's page 2, line 2.31, strike at the enroll me 6-month, 12-month income review, right? Is that what we're doing?
Yep, and the word or.
And or. Gotta add and or in there. So, Mr. Monahan, will you get that so we can, I say the right thing? God forbid I say the wrong thing.
Mr. Chair, the amendment would be as follows. Page 2, line 31, strike at the. Page 2, line 32, strike enrollees. Delete the new language and strike income review or.
I love it. So that would read, any required premium shall be determined at application and redetermined when a change in income or household size is reported.
Yes.
Be on the same page?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. So the oral amendment is as we just stated. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Nice work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So disposition of this, we're going to lay this over. Nice work, Robin, Brittany, and Ms. Nelson. Even though it has a no zero fiscal thing, it's got to go, it'll be in the budget. Well, maybe this will be the only budget bill we have in our budget omnibus. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Is Senator Boldon in the house?
Thank you.
Hello. All the way from Rochester, Minnesota. How was the drive up Highway 52? How was the Cannon Falls area? Do you know you have one of the most fabulous recording studios in Cannon Falls in the world?
Do not, Mr. Chair.
No, just that is in. Senate File 3459, you got substance use disorder treatment requirements modifications. I think you got an A1 amendment you want to get to us?
I do, Mr. Chair.
And you got some members, Allison Gill, Steve Kine, John Capicios, Janelle Colburn, and Munira Mohammed. All 5 people coming to testify on behalf of your bill, is that correct?
I believe so, Mr. Chair.
Sounds like a winner. So why don't a couple of the folks come working your way down here? Why don't you tell us about your A1 amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the A1 amendment makes some minor changes as recommended by the Department of Human Services and the Board of Behavioral Health and Therapy. Specifically, it removes the specific training requirements for licensed alcohol and drug counselors, which is in Section 1. There was some concern that the counselors would have difficulty meeting the requirement because of lack of available training resources, so that is removed. It would also remove the requirement that DHS publish a directory of different types of available substance use disorder treatment programs, which was in Section 12, because this is redundant. DHS is already working to construct such a directory for the public, so that was removed. And lastly, as a technical correction, the amendment would move the protections against religious coercion in the bill, which is Section 11, from Chapter 245B of the Minnesota Statutes, which pertain to substance use disorder treatment administered by DHS, to Chapter 241, which deals with corrections and the criminal legal system. This change makes sense because in most instances where individuals are mandated by the state to receive a specific type of substance disorder treatment, this originates in the criminal legal system. That is the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Members, the amendment is in front of you. Any questions? If not, all those in favor of the A1 amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. It is now in the form that you want it. That's an author's amendment. So, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this bill is a straightforward bill to ensure that Minnesotans who are being required to receive substance use disorder treatment by the state receive care that is appropriate for them. Minnesota has a strong interest in effectively addressing substance use disorders among those involved with the criminal legal system. Approximately 90% of incarcerated people in Minnesota have been diagnosed with a substance use disorder, and such disorders can increase recidivism if left untreated. As a state, we have made significant efforts to address these issues, and Minnesota has among the best substance use disorder treatment programs in the world. However, in some cases, individuals are being required by the state criminal legal system to participate in programs that are not appropriate for them, which can undermine recovery. For example, individuals may object to religious or other elements of substance use disorder programs. Many of the most common peer-based recovery programs are 12-step programs, which have religious or spiritual elements. Other programs may discourage medication-assisted treatment, which is recommended as best practice and important to recovery for many people. And these programs work well for a great many people. Many folks have achieved and maintained sobriety through programs like Alcoholics Anonymous. However, it is clear that they don't work for everyone. In particular, non-religious Minnesotans, who make up about a fourth of the population, and religious minorities, who are about 5% of the population, may object to being required by the state to participate in religious programming that conflicts with their beliefs. We are not talking about people objecting to being required to participate in substance use disorder treatment in general. Many recognize the need for this help and want to receive it, but the religious components in some programs can be a barrier for those who want to object to them and can make treatment difficult, those programs difficult and less effective. Courts have also found that it's unconstitutional to require individuals to participate in religious treatment programs that they object to. However, people involved with the criminal legal system may not know about these rights, or they may not be in a situation where they can assert their rights. So this bill takes a proactive approach, increasing the range of appropriate treatment programs available, providing notice to individuals of their rights, and reinforcing existing constitutional protections on this issue throughout the criminal legal system. This bill is meant to ensure that every person required by the state to receive substance use disorder treatment is able to access treatment that is appropriate for them, not to be forced into a one-size-fits-all option. It will reduce recidivism, respect religious freedom, and help reduce liability by ensuring that individuals' rights are not violated. So finally, the simple fact is that no one should ever be forced by the state to take part in religious programming that they object to, and their recovery and freedom should never depend on it. By making appropriate treatment more accessible, this bill will help to achieve that goal. And Mr. Chair, as mentioned, we do have some testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Boldon. And who do you have? Do you get somebody online? Is that? No. I don't have my thing. You have nobody online. This is all
Yeah,
in person.
Allison Gill is online.
She is on Zoom. Allison, are you on Zoom?
I sure am. Hi.
Hey, for the record, please state yourself and where you're from.
Wonderful. Thank you. Chairperson Hoffman and members of the Senate Human Services Committee, my name is Allison Gill, and I'm the Vice President for Legal and Policy for American Atheists, a national civil rights organization that works to uphold the separation of religion and government and advocate for the rights of atheists and non-religious people. So thank you for allowing me to speak to you today about SF 3459, the Recovery Options Act, an important bill that will help make substance use disorder treatment programs more accessible while protecting religious freedom and civil liberties. American Atheists frequently hears from individuals who are forced by states to participate in substance use disorder treatment programs that have religious elements that conflict with their beliefs. And these folks legitimately want to deal with this illness, but religious components in some of these programs create a barrier for them, preventing them from getting the help that they need. Just last year, a West Virginia court found that our client, Andrew Miller, was inappropriately forced to participate in a very religious 12-step program to even qualify for parole. The judge made clear that Mr. Miller could have just gone with the flow. If he could just set aside his beliefs, it's likely that he would have gotten out of prison earlier, but then these constitutional violations would never have been brought to light. Most people in the criminal legal system are in a vulnerable place. Not everyone is able to stand up like Andrew Miller and demand respect for their constitutional rights to not be subject to religious coercion by the state. Many people don't even know about their rights. So this bill is an effort to deal with this issue proactively by helping to ensure that individuals are aware of their right to be free of religious coercion, to ensure that the state will not require anyone to participate in religious substance use disorder treatment programs that they object to, and to ensure that there are additional appropriate options for treatment, which will lower the barriers to treatment that many face. I'll just quickly walk through the bill. My notes here.
Ms. Gill, I was just informed it was 2 to 3 minutes. There's 5 of us, that's 15. If you slowly walk us through the bill, then I'm going to have to take time away from anybody else that's doing it. So I appreciate your knowledge on this, and, you know, I do want to leave room for conversations, because if somebody's talking about all pathways to recovery and you guys are feeling you're not being included in the all pathways to recovery kind of conversation, then I'd rather dig about that. If you want to go into the bill, then I am going to remove other testifiers from doing it, because I need to be on a timeline. This is a short week for us, so I appreciate that.
Fair enough. I'll just mention one thing then, and then just stop. I'll just mention in each of the protections set up, there's 3 important parts. One, there's a good faith objection to a person has to make. So this is not meant to facilitate frivolous complaints, but to remove real impediments to recovery. 2, there's a requirement to participate in an equivalent alternative treatment program. So the goal here is to allow for appropriate treatment, not to prevent necessary treatment. This is not a get out of treatment, card, if that makes sense, and a fail-safe provision. So even though there are many terrific treatment programs that do not have religious elements available throughout Minnesota, such as Smart Recovery, if for some reason an alternative program is not available, the individual can still be required to participate in a treatment program and opt out of the religious elements. So I just wanted to make those things clear. And thank you for letting me take time to speak about this important bill.
All right, thank you. Next you have, it looks like Stephen Kine, Minnesota Outreach Coordinator.
Yeah.
Smart Recovery.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I have served the state of Minnesota as a certified peer recovery specialist. I'm currently serving as the outreach coordinator for the Smart Recovery National Office. The Recovery Options Act means a lot to me, because I've seen firsthand what having limited options for recovery can do to someone who is truly motivated to find a successful sobriety. Started with my own story, being unaware of alternatives to the 12-step programs. I went through treatment 4 times and attended countless AA and NA meetings spanning from the age of 19 to 54. My attempts at sobriety never reached 6 months. My last attempt at sobriety was completely different. A forward-thinking counselor at the last 12-step facility that I attended asked if I had heard of Smart Recovery. I had not. She didn't really know a lot about it, but thanks to her suggestion, I did find a program that fit me. I'll be celebrating 6 years of sobriety this June. Soon after finding my sobriety, I was trained as the certified peer recovery specialist here in Minnesota and began working at a men's house in southern Minnesota. I was helping to manage a house with 18 men. In doing my weekly interviews with these men, I was seeing my personal story mirrored in some of them. Many were happy with their 12-step pathway to sobriety and doing quite well. There are others that were struggling with that pathway. These men felt coerced, as one of the house rules was the requirement of meeting weekly with a sponsor. Only 12 steps has sponsors. As a Smart Recovery facilitator, I see many who have struggled with AA or NA and found relief in finding a program that fits them. About half of our group does Smart Recovery and another program such as AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery. There's many other options out there. Pathways to successful and peaceful sobriety is as varied as the people that are seeking it. I ask that you pass this important legislation to help those searching for the right program find it and thrive in their sobriety. Thank you.
1 minute, 56 seconds. That's amazing. Yes. Thank you. Not that I'm counting. John Capicius, did I say that right?
No, it's actually John Capacious.
Capacious. Well, why would they put an A before an E and not the E before the A? That's the thing that,
It's a good question.
That's a cool name.
No one has ever actually pronounced it right the first time, I don't think.
That's John, welcome. I'll let you pronounce your name and you tell us where you're from, and I appreciate you being here.
My name is John Capacious. I'm a smart facilitator in the Mankato region. I actually live up in New Prague, but I have been doing facilitating for 1.5 years. My story starts when I actually went into treatment. Part of my treatment, because it was 12-step based, was told that to get out of the 12-step based treatment, I was going to have to be in a weekly meeting type situation, and that I was going to have a sponsor and different things like that. The 12-step program wasn't working for me, and I just really couldn't see or agree with a lot of the terms in it. And my counselor had never heard of SMART, but another member of my group had told me about SMART, and then I went into it, and actually through SMART, I was able to gain the sobriety that I needed in comparison. And most groups do not know about SMART. It has not been brought up. It's just widely starting to become known recently. The other thing with that is last night I did a group, and I had 17 people in it, someone from Florida, New Orleans, Detroit. I get people from all over the nation, and all of them agreed without SMART they wouldn't be sober today. They had different varying degrees with history with AA. Some have been there for years, some just never clicked with them, but they all said without SMART they wouldn't be sober today. So that's my story.
Wow, thank you. Minute 26 seconds. Not that I'm counting. Thank you for your story. Thank you, John, I appreciate that. Juniel Colburn. Munira Mohammed, are you in the, yeah, come on up. You're on deck.
Hi, my name is Janelle Colburn, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here today and to share my story. I became a SMART facilitator about 2 o'clock in the morning this morning. I finished my exam. I thought it would be a good idea. I'd been studying for 6 months, get it done before I showed up here today. Add a little credibility. But I am a Christian. I have a religious practice. I'm deeply committed to my faith. And I am 22 months sober. I tried to go to AA when I first found sobriety, and I went to a few meetings, and because I started referring to myself as in recovery, I was pulled aside by some folks there and told that we don't use that word here. And I was not made to feel welcome, and it was very frustrating because I didn't, self-esteem wise, you don't want to add a label to yourself that you are the behavior. That didn't work for me, and I didn't feel welcome, and I felt like I was being judged by the decision to opt not to own a label. So when I went into inpatient treatment, I had the good fortune to have a menu of options that were given to me as to how I'd want to manage my recovery. I was able to be a part of Recovery Dharma, a meditation-based program, and actually became a group leader while I was there and was able to lead Dharma sessions, peer-led. And then when I got out of treatment and successfully had finished, I found Smart Recovery. And that had been an option while I was in treatment, but I didn't explore it at the time. I've been going to SMART meetings for the last 1.5 years, and I honestly can say that I am sitting here sober today because of the chance that I took with this program and the wonderful community that I met and the people that are there. I love the online element. I go to both online and in person. And one of the reasons that I really enjoy the program is that they offer a cognitive behavioral program background which fits me. I'm not somebody who can just white knuckle it, put a label on myself and say, let's go. I want to look forward and go into my life and fix the problems and looking back on why it is that I used the chemical that I did.
Thank you.
And that's my story.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story. You took John's remaining minute. That's good. But I appreciate your story. And congratulations on getting SMART whatever it is.
Facilitator.
Facilitator. That's the way to go. Right? That's awesome. And for being in recovery. Munira Mohammed, welcome. And then I just want to let her, she's coming in. Jody, yeah, we're gonna reflip because you got to go. So we'll do DCT up right away, and then we'll come back to Matt's all DHS stuff. So welcome, Munira. Welcome, Ms. Mohammed.
Thank you. My name is Munir Muhammad, and I'm with the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU of Minnesota. And I'm here to support Senator Boldon's bill allowing people to opt out of religious requirements or religious elements within substance use treatment programs. Many Minnesotans mandated to receive treatment, often through the criminal legal system, are denied the right of choice when it comes to those treatments. Substance use programs frequently include religious teachings and practices that conflict with an individual's belief system. Yet many people will be required to attend treatment despite the conflict it poses with their beliefs. These treatments requirements become increasingly harsh when tied to things like sentencing, parole, or probation. People can find their sentences extended for refusing to abide by a treatment's program steps. The average person is frequently unaware of their rights, unable to advocate for themselves, or their lawyer is unaware of secular programs as an alternative. And you can imagine how substance abuse treatments mandated by a judge might feel final or obligatory to someone. But the legislature can act now, let people know that they have the rights in mandated treatment, and make it clear that no one should be forced by the government to take part in religious programs. The ACLU of Minnesota supports this bill because it will uphold our constitutional rights to religious freedom. And we urge the committee to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, members. Any questions for the good senator from Rochester? Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Boldon. Question for you. We had a letter in our packets from the Alliance Wellness Center, which is a faith-based, culturally specific program for men and women who are predominantly East African, most specifically Somali, and serving them with substance use disorder treatment. And Mr. Chair, and to the bill author, I'm wondering, could you talk about conversations that you've had with stakeholders that would be directly impacted by this, whether it be the Alliance Wellness Center or other faith-based substance use disorder treatment providers?
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. I don't have that letter in front of me, so I cannot speak to that specific letter. But I will say, just as a reminder of the intention of this bill really is about options. And so there are many programs that work for many folks. It sounds like that is a program that is working for some folks, which is great. Other programs, 12-step programs were mentioned, and those work very well for some people. This bill is about offering options. We know, substance use disorder is a significant issue across our state, and allowing people to connect in programs that meet their specific needs is really important, so we can be sure that they have the resources they need to get sober. And so this provides options. It doesn't take away from anyone else's program.
Senator Rasmussen has a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Senator Boldon's response. And I guess I would take that as a no, that the bill author hasn't had direct conversations with the different faith-based substance use disorder providers that would be affected by this bill, unless I'll give Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify that with the bill author.
I'm sitting here because it reminds me of the conversation. John Magnuson, who was Jim Ramsted's, not to overquote Jim Ramstad, but I will. Jim Ramsted's, he was a staff, and through years of recovery, and Magnuson, when he was the director of March, the oversee, whatever that association is, right? He used to say, if you truly believe in all pathways to recovery, then you need to believe in all pathways to recovery. My recovery story isn't going to be like yours. And then that was the conversation. The success of Adult Teen Challenge is beyond. I mean, it's there, right? Especially Minnesota. And the Adult Teen Challenge in Minnesota is not like the national one. It's its own little thing. But their pathway to recovery is through Christ. Now, there's other ones that isn't that doing, hence the 12-step versus not. And this conversation is going all around the place. So if you feel that this bill is going to impinge on believing what Magnuson has taught us for years, that we believe in all pathways, my pathway is not yours, and so that's where this conversation goes. So Senator Rasmussen, then we'll go to Utke, and then we'll go to Senator Maye Quade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and those are concerns that I have, and and to to talk about, Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge in particular, they have a faith-based approach that they would say is integral to their proven success with their substance use disorder programs. From the letter here from the Alliance Wellness Center, they would say if this bill moves forward and is adopted, that their ability to provide culturally specific programming for largely the Somali community would be impinged upon. And so I have deep concerns, Mr. Chair, that this bill is going to make it harder for faith-based organizations that provide high-quality substance use disorder treatment across the state to be able to do their work. And I'm just, Mr. Chair, would recommend us, not moving forward with this bill today, just to ensure that we have those organizations and groups are able to talk with the bill author and with members of this committee to provide that feedback.
You talk about that letter, did it come to everybody, Jordan? Because Senator
I do not
Mitchell-
have it.
I don't have it
Been
either.
looking.
But it's interesting that so here's one, I suppose their pathway is through, the Islamic tradition. Can I see that? Before I say anything. Senator Matthews, as we're looking at this, you wanted to pop in here. It was going to go Utke, then you, but Utke said go to Matthews first. He'll wait till after you. So. It was for but then let's go to him and then to her and then to you. Does that work? Or do you want to go? No, you weren't cutting. You were just pointing it out. I'm bad. It goes Utke, then her, then you. Does that make sense? No. Go to her and then Matthews and then you. All right, I'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Boldon, I love your bill, part of your bill, I signed on to it. And from the way that I'm reading it, in particular, I'm reading a lot about people who are compelled to attend substance use disorder treatment, right? And so the letter that we got from the Alliance, they're talking about people who choose their program. And so this does not require faith-based programs to not be faith-based. It just requires that people who are not religious or do not want to participate in religious-based substance use disorder treatment do not have to participate in substance use disorder treatment that is faith-based if they are compelled to attend substance use disorder treatment. Okay, so I think much like other bills, this is giving people options. It's not saying what programs have to exist, what they have to do. It's saying when somebody has to go, they are able to say if it's going to be, if they're compelled to go to a substance use disorder treatment that is faith-based or religious-based, that they, right, if they have an alternative, they attend that alternative. But if there is no alternative, that they can't find one, that they're not compelled to participate in the religious aspects of substance use disorder treatment. Okay, so I think this is a really good bill because this, there are so many people who are not religious. I'm Lutheran, and I don't think I would want to attend a religious-based substance use disorder treatment. I just kind of keep my faith right in my church and nowhere else. And so I really appreciate this because I know people who are in recovery who haven't sought any professional support at all because all they know is that it's religious-based and they aren't. And so I think this is really helpful in making sure that everybody has an access pathway to recovery, in particular people who are compelled to attend substance use disorder treatment. So thank you.
So, Senator Maye Quade, you don't believe that this bill infringes upon that when we talk about all pathways to recovery, we should support and honor all pathways?
Mr. Chair, no, because if you read through this, you're seeing an offender who in good faith objects. So over and over again, we're talking about people who are being compelled to attend treatment, either having an equivalent alternative that is not faith-based, or if they can't find one, that they're not required to participate in the religious aspects of that treatment. And so I think this protects us from being running afoul of First Amendment issues, actually, as allowing people to not being forced into religious treatment if they're compelled to participate in substance use disorder treatment.
Thank you. Senator Matthews, then we'll go to Senator Utke, then Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not reading the bill quite that same way with the bill and the amendment. If the issue is that you need better access to non-faith-based programs, then I think we could try to write a solution that gets at that. But I'm reading about opting out or not having a part of the religious components in religious forms of treatment. And I'm arguing the First Amendment from a different way. Obviously, yes. I believe in everyone's freedom of religion. I believe in everyone's freedom of speech. The other component of compelling is you could come into a compelled issue the other direction of a compelled speech by the program that's there, that you believe that this is the message that we give to our clients that we have coming into our organization. Government's compelling me to give a different message to them instead and says you cannot use these religious aspects in the message. There's a whole long history of compelled speech through the Supreme Court that says not only does freedom of speech mean that you have the right to speak what you want to believe, but the government also cannot compel you to speak something that you do not believe in. So I don't see this quite being the issue that we're getting at. I do see this as infringing on the religious treatment pieces of this. And if you're trying to not impact that, which I'm hearing from some of the members here, then I think we need to back up and take a different go at this. If we want to, if the problem is not enough access for non-religious court-mandated treatment options, then that's the solution we should be focusing on, and I don't read that as the solution in this bill.
As you were talking, I looked over and I looked at Senator Utke and everybody on this side of the table, and I said, maybe this should go to judiciary, and they all said, that's where it's going to next. So maybe that First Amendment conversation, I've never
Mr.
thought
Chair?
we'd get this.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, you're
Yeah.
like, it goes Utke, then Mitchell, then you, but if you want to go,
Yes, Mr.
I mean,
Chair.
if you want to get into this conversation on YouTube, go ahead.
And Senator Mitchell is a real attorney, so she can also speak on this too. But again, we should really be looking at this language. It allows a person to opt out of the religious aspects of treatment. It does not require people who are giving religious-based substance use disorder treatment to not deliver that religious components. It allows a person who is compelled to attend religious-based treatment to not participate in the religious aspect. So it does not change what somebody is offering.
Yeah.
And that is what is in all throughout this thing.
So Senator, Senator Matthews, it's interesting, here's two different aspects of this. You're saying that thing and he's disagreeing with that. I think it's Senator, let's go to Senator Mitchell.
Yes.
Let's get her, I don't want to get some attorneys in here. Not that I want to go to judiciary, but you got one down there, you might as well do it. So Senator Mitchell, where are we going with this?
Well, thank you. And as you know, I believe I'm the only actual member of the Minnesota Bar that sits on this committee. So when we talk about First Amendment rights, to compel someone to be part of something that does not correspond to their religion clearly runs afoul of their First Amendment right. And so to give them the option to opt out would be the absolutely correct thing to do, not just constitutionally, but also, I think, morally. Because, for example, if we have someone that's a member of the LGBTQ community, we clearly know that there are occasionally religions that act in an exclusionary way to the very core of who these people are. And so if we are meeting people where they are in their addiction and taking them as they are and allowing them to be part of something that honors them, instead of putting them in something that might be directly conflicting with their very personhood, I think we are going to absolutely have the best outcomes for our people that are dealing with this. So I actually really, really love this bill. I think it makes us better as a state of Minnesota of being respectful of people's freedom of religion, whether that's religion, no religion, whatever else. And I actually sent you a text to see if I could be a co-author on this. I love it so much. So thank you for bringing this.
So, thank you for that. I think Aaron Maye Quade, Utke, and Rasmussen want to still talk. You want to go in that direction? You want to go?
Mr. Chair, I'll defer to Senator Utke
All
because he
right.
hasn't had a chance
Look
yet.
at you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we're kind of going back and forth on this from the ones that like it and don't. We just heard from someone that does, and I don't.
You don't.
I have serious concerns about this. The fact that I mean, we've talked about this before with SUD treatment centers and providers. We've got all kinds out there. We have a large selection where they can find one that fits. Because it seems to be with the success of the treatment, it's finding one that fits. And this is trying to convert some of them that we've got that have been extremely successful. And, you know, we're saying somebody can be exempted from the religious part. Well, that's part of the program, and we all know that when we go to things, if somebody has to step out all the time, that's disruptive, and what are they doing? The treatment is part of the full process. So I just see this as a very concerning, trying to basically water down or be a little disruptive to some of our very successful programs. So with that, I'm just, I don't like what I read and see, so.
So you're having the internal struggle. You're having the internal struggle on that First Amendment. You're seeing this from the viewpoint of the 12-step, the higher power first thing. I get it. I mean, and that's that. But what he's talking about, what Senator Ike is talking about, that's the internal debate among the recovery communities that are sitting out here, right? It is. So we're going Maye Quade, then Rasmussen.
Oh,
So.
no, Senator Rasmussen hasn't had a chance to speak.
Yeah.
And then oh, you did, okay. So I think it would be really helpful to we were going down this road, and I think it might be helpful to actually read this. An offender who in good faith objects to any religious element must not be required to participate in that treatment program as a condition of release. Their good faith objection of the offender to participate, they can find an equivalent alternative. If it's not available, then the offender may decline to participate in religious elements of the treatment program. They may not use their refusal to participate in the religious aspects to affect their incarceration or release. The client's religious preference may be taken into account. A patient has the right to refrain from any religious or spiritual exercise or activity. A patient who in good faith objects to the religious character of the treatment facility has the right to participate in an equivalent alternative program. If an equivalent alternative is not available, then the patient may decline to participate in any religious element of the treatment program. No court, corrections officer, probation officer, so on and so forth, shall indirectly or directly compel an individual to participate in any religious element of a substance use disorder treatment program. It's all about the individual. It is all about what an individual is required to do. It does not require any program to change what they are doing. It only affects the individual who might have an objection. So this really is a ridiculous conversation because it's all right here in the bill. And I think we can all read, and we should.
Ridiculous. I like having this conversation because it gets to the heart of the thing. And I think we're going to go to, this is going to end up going to judiciary, right? We're moving this judiciary anyway. I think we pass it on to judiciary. Go ahead. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've heard a lot today about how the status quo violates the constitutional rights of Minnesotans. And so Mr. Chair had a question for the bill author, maybe any of our testifiers. Do we have a court case that has shown that the status quo in current law violates the First Amendment rights of Minnesotans?
Anybody have any?
Any court cases? I've heard lots of claims about that, but I haven't heard a court case citation yet. So I wanted to see, Mr. Chair, if the bill author had one.
No, Mr. Senator Rasmussen, thanks. I actually played a lawyer one time in a play, but I don't know if there's any court cases on that. Do you know of any at all, Senator? I mean, that's a great question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. I think we heard from a lawyer here that spoke to this as well, but I will say I can reference one. So a man in West Virginia recently won a preliminary injunction to prevent the state from forcing him to participate in deeply religious 12-step programming to qualify for parole. Miller versus Marshall, 2023.
Parole. Got it. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would just say, we're talking about the law here in Minnesota, as it currently is, and how our courts operate.
Yeah.
And I want to respond, and I appreciate Senator Maye Quade taking us through some of the language of the bill. And I want to point out that the bill does have language that could require providers to change what they are currently doing. And I'll give a couple of examples, Mr. Chair, because I think this is important. If we look at the Alliance Wellness Center, they talk about that their reading of this bill that, again, focuses on culturally specific programming for the East African population, that they believe that this would require their staff to have separate programming for different clients. Mr. Chair, think about, if you were to talk about Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, And if you were to have someone in Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge say, well, I want to participate in Adult and Teen Challenge, but not the faith components, that's core to their programming and what they do and their success. And lastly, Mr. Chair, think about a 12-step program without having a sponsor. That's kind of what we're talking about in this bill. And my concern is, this is the committee where we should be hearing from some of the providers. I've heard from some of the providers that they haven't been involved in these conversations, and so I do not support sending this bill out today. I think this is where we need to talk about these issues and hash it out. And from many conversations I've had with the chair of the Judiciary Committee, he does not view it as his role to fix issues within our jurisdiction. And so I think we should not move this bill out of committee today and have further input on this important change.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have been reading through the bill. My comments are based on my reading with it. Also, without knowing the case that was cited from West Virginia, the holding that was given, I think, still meets the parameters that we're talking about here. If the judge said you're not required to do this particular 12-step program without knowing what the case is or reading the issue, my guess would be the judge says, I'm not forcing you to go this path. We're going to have to come up with an alternate path for you to go down that will meet the final checkbox that you need to do. As I'm reading the language, even that the previous senator read, Senator Maye Quade, here's my issue with the language. If an equivalent alternative treatment program is not available, then ... And I'm going, why isn't one available? If there isn't something available, then let's fix that part. Because you are requiring a faith-based program to not do what they also have the constitutional freedom to do. You have two people, both with constitutional rights in this picture. You have the patient that's going there for treatment. He or she is entitled to his religious beliefs or the lack thereof. You have the provider and their constitutional rights for what they are teaching, whether it's religious or not, in their form. And just saying, well, they're opting out, that means you're not saying that one particular component of it. That doesn't meet, that doesn't fly with telling you can't say this one part is not upholding your religious beliefs or your freedom of speech. By saying, well, you can keep saying it, we're just not saying this one religious part. That's not meeting the test or the criteria. So I'm asking, if we've got a problem, Senator Rasmussen's question is a good one on, do we have something here in Minnesota? My question's coming back to, if an equivalent alternative is not available, then why aren't we addressing how to make them more available rather than saying, well, you're going to be in this religious component, but now the religious organization is prohibited from doing what they want to teach and what they want to speak. Because you have the rights of both. I'm asking this committee to protect the rights of both, saying that, well, the treatment is just prohibited from sharing the religious component, is putting the rights of one over the other.
Got it. Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to clarify. I love that Senator Boldon was asked to name a lawsuit, and she named a lawsuit. And the fact that it was in West Virginia is irrelevant because it was a lawsuit filed in federal court because the state had something going on similar to what Minnesota has. So if someone did bring this forward in Minnesota, it would be a similar outcome because that was a federal filing because it did run afoul of the person's First Amendment rights and their freedom of religion to make it contingent for, in that case, it was an atheist, to be part of a program that was religious. And they were conditioning that person's parole on being part of that religious treatment. And so this is exactly what we have going on in Minnesota. And so I think it's interesting that you were asked to cite something, you cited something. It's very parallel. It would be used as persuasive law if a case was ever brought in Minnesota. and that we are still even having this argument. This is absolutely 100% the right thing to do, as I've said, morally, but also legally, it has been shown that this is how we should act.
Nice. We're going to go Mitchell, Maye Quade, Matthews. So Mitchell, thank you, Senator Mitchell. Aaron May, Senator Maye Quade, and then.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mitchell, Maye Quade. No, I think Rasmussen, wasn't it Rasmussen that wanted to go after Maye Quade? Did you want it? Did you want to go?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I like this. I could do this. We got Commissioner, the Commissioner of DHS has got to go to another thing, and we really want to get the DCT thing. I mean, we could spend all sorts of time talking about this. This is good. And I still come back to the fact, if we truly believe in all pathways to sobriety, pathways to recovery, then we need to be non-discriminatory across the board on that, right? But don't you tell me what to do, right? This is my journey of sobriety, not yours, right? So are we saying we're doing that? If that's the case, then let's move this thing to judiciary. If you think we're not doing it, then we need to keep it here, and we'll table this bill until they fix the language on that, unless you have somebody here's got an idea of what to do with that. I'm open to what the team wants to do.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Senator.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I would like to point to some language that I think would be helpfulness in this discussion. And I want to be clear, there is nothing in this bill that prohibits an entity, substance use, a treatment program from doing anything. This is not about the programs. This is about choices for people. And so if we look at the language, 2.27, a program to which the offender has no religious objection, if an equivalent alternative treatment program is not available within a reasonable time, the offender may decline to participate. It doesn't say that the treatment program has to change what they're doing. They don't. They will continue to do what they're doing. This is about choice for patients, choices for people, for the exact reason that you just said, all pathways. Right now, this state is compelling people to take part in programs that do not align with their religious beliefs, which is not in alignment with the First Amendment. And so this is about choice for people. It says nothing, there's nothing in this language that prohibits any treatment program from continuing exactly what they are doing right now. We know those programs work very well for some people. People should be able to choose what program works best for them.
Interesting.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I was going to add is, as we all learned in government class, the executive branch enforces the laws, the judicial branch interprets the laws, and we make the laws. And so I don't think we should be getting into some sort of constitutional argument about what is and is not. We are not the jurists here. There's only one of us who is a member of the Minnesota Bar Association, and none of us are constitutional attorneys. And so I think that we should make good law. And I think this is a very, very good law that allows people to participate in the kind of substance use disorder treatment that works for them and aligns with their faith without changing anybody else's experience, without changing anybody else's programming. I think we have work to do to make sure that there are non-religious-based substance use disorder treatment programs, and I think there was key words that you said, Senator Boldon, that are not available within reasonable time, because not all programs that exist and operate have openings or have spaces, and so I think that was a really important phrase that you lifted up. But that's not the work of this bill. This bill is to allow people who are already participating and or going to participate in substance use disorder treatment to participate in a way that honors their faith or lack thereof. And that's why I think we should move this bill out of this committee.
Yeah, I thank you. I think we're going to go Matthews, Rasmussen, Mann. So I'm hearing you on that. What our role in human services is to do, and I'm compelling to moving this thing on. But that's just my mind thinking. So Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, I actually agree with the reading of the holding from West Virginia that Senator Boldon and Senator Mitchell is saying. I'm saying as applied to here, the holding was the person was not required to attend the 12-step treatment. What was not said was the holding was not that the 12-step treatment program was required to have the person but not utilize the religious components of the treatment. That's the delineation that I'm making here. That's why I think this does have some issues here within the bill. I think we do need to fix it here. And yes, as legislators, the first thing that we do is to uphold the Constitution of the United States. We are to wrestle with it and craft laws that align with that. Yes, the judiciary has the review with that, but we are still to do our work here to make sure that what we craft is in alignment with the First Amendment. Thank you.
Senator Rasmussen and Senator Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I firmly believe that we should keep this bill in this committee and provide further opportunity for faith-based substance use disorder programs to provide some comment. And because they're telling us that they're concerned with with how this bill will impact the work that they do for Minnesotans. And I don't think if we send it on to judiciary, we'll be able to have that type of conversation about this bill. And I think it's important to go back to this core premise, which is we're saying like, okay, someone could participate in a 12-step program, but miss steps, along the way and not have a sponsor, which is a key part of the program. And I'm just really concerned, Mr. Chair, that we are going to be taking strong faith-based providers and basically forcing them to create alternative programming that they currently don't provide. I think if there is a problem with a need for more secular options within substance use disorder, that's something that we can do with the bill. We can have things to encourage different options within substance use disorder, but this could harm current options that are available for Minnesotans. And so I don't think we've fully had the conversation on this bill yet.
Any potential language to put in there to satisfy that potential worry? Any ideas? No? Okay, Senator Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Boldon, is there language in the bill that says that a program must supplement or replace the religious portion of treatment that a patient opts out of?
Senator Boldon.
No, none whatsoever. This does not say that programs need to do anything differently. They can continue doing exactly what they're doing. This is about choice for patients. And I'll just reiterate that we have heard from several of our testifiers, there are other options for treatment programs out there. This bill is about choice and aligning patients with a program that works for them so they can get sober.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Mann.
So to be crystal clear, is it fair to say that a program does not need to accommodate a client by adding or changing programming if a client chooses to opt out of the religious portion of a treatment program?
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you, Senator.
So, anybody, go ahead, Senator.
Mr. Chair, I'll just add that when courts interpret laws, they do look at committee and floor records to look at the intent of the author. The exchange that Senator Mann and Senator Boldon just had right there is also very helpful for being on the record of the intent of the bill author.
So, thank you, members. This is good. Sorry, Ms. Gill, the discussion is between members right now as far as the disposition of this bill. If I see we have the March director who's in this room, if he wants to, compel into this argument, I'd be more than happy. My disposition of this is I think it should go to judiciary, and I'm not doing it I'm not saying that. I do think this is a judiciary conversation because I am under the belief that there isn't anything that would stop me from valuing my pathway to sobriety in this case, what I read in here, right? However, there is two things that are being raised by senators on this committee, and that's, I think, something we need to take into consideration. Senator Edke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll go back and just reiterate the part that we need to, at least in my opinion, fix it here because judiciary will only touch on the part that fits their committee. This conversation about the SUD and that part of it doesn't fall under their jurisdiction. So the conversation gets real narrow if it gets there. So I think at least I would like to see this have some solution before it leaves here, which means let's bring in some of these affected parties and get their input because I think we really need to hear from them.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, you're next.
I would just add that because almost this entire bill relates to offenders and people who are being compelled to participate in substance use disorder treatment, it is almost entirely within judiciary's jurisdiction.
Yeah, and so I think those conversations, Senator Edke, that you guys are bringing, and to me, Senator Rasmussen, they said to you, no, we need to fix it here, but I think our stuff is done here. I mean, you know what I mean? You don't think so? Okay. I'm at a dance hall. I think we should do a, motion. What they want to do is move it, be laid, this one needs to be recommended and passed and referred to judiciary and public safety. That's the piece that wants to be there. So Senator Boldon, any final thoughts? And then Senator Maye Quade, you're going to make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this conversation.
I do too.
I would just appreciate us moving on to judiciary where we can continue having these conversations. I am a bit troubled by the verbiage of needing to fix it because the bill doesn't do what is sort of wanting to be fixed. And so I'm not sure what we would change because it's not doing that. But I'm happy to have conversations with anyone who wants to have a conversation about this. And if anyone wants to bring language, I'm happy to look at that.
Thank you, Senator Bull. Hopefully we don't personalize it. Don't be bothered by something. I mean, I sit there and I go, there are things I get bothered by, but in this one, it's like somebody else's lived experiences in this piece. And I just keep coming back. And Brian, I think there should be a follow-up with people in March. There should be a follow-up with the folks that Senator Rasmussen did talk about, on that. Because if I like what you're doing here. I absolutely do, because I know a lot of people in the recovery world that are like, yeah, I just don't do this higher powered thing. And it's like, okay, fine. But guess what? That's your pathway to recovery. It's not mine. It's not yours, right? And so, but there's a but clause here. If we're going to start to slowly evade and say, well, no, this is now a black and white issue, then I got a systems problem with that. But I'm not seeing that in here. But I got 2 people on this committee that are saying that, actually 3. And so here's what I want to happen. If we do what we're going to do here, will you please follow up with the folks that are in the world, the Tracy Andersons of the world, or somebody in the recovery world that's absolutely, in that line. That would be, I think it would be really beneficial on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to do that. And when I say I'm troubled, I don't take any of this personally, and appreciate the discussion and the input. And, if there is language to make it clear that we are not asking treatment providers to do anything differently, then happy to continue those conversations.
Senator Abler wants to say something. I'm sorry, Senator Abler, I didn't see you. Are you zooming in all the way from downtown Anoka?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm not sure, I didn't try to say something, but I listened to a lot of the discussion. I do absolutely believe that if it goes and gets through judiciary, we need to come back and flesh out the impact on the treatment community, because I don't think that's been totally fleshed out. And so maybe we send it off without recommendation and then bring it back here. How would that be? Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, absolutely. And it's been done before. Those questions that we raised up about, especially on the treatment side, sending it out a recommendation, really the only recommendation is when something goes to the floor. So yeah, that's been done before. And it can come back to us. I like that. Senator Abler, were you making a motion then?
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion. That we send it off without recommendation, and then with the hope we'll look at it again. Thank you.
But that's fine. Yeah, because that's how it's done anyway. None of this stuff, the only time a recommendation matters is when it's on the Senate floor. So this has been, so Senate File 3459 be sent to refer to Judiciary and Public Safety without recommendation by Senator Abler. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Senator Maye Quade.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to recommend that this bill pass this committee and be referred to judiciary.
Oh, Mr. Chair, did my
amended.
motion fail?
Your motion did fail, Senator Abler.
As amended.
I'm so sad.
As amended.
All right.
Senator Maye Quade motions that Senate File 3459 be recommended to pass and be referred to Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. Is that as amended? Did I get that right?
Roll call, Mr. Chair.
Senator Matthews has called for a roll call. A roll call will be provided. So Senate File 3459 be recommended to pass and referred as amendment to Judiciary and Public Safety. Roll call is provided. You'll call out the roll.
Chair Hoffman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fate,
Yes.
Lead Abler,
No.
Senator Mann. Senator Matthews,
No.
Senator Maye Quade,
Yes.
Senator Mitchell,
Yes.
Senator Rasmussen, Senator Wickland,
Senator Utke.
Senator Utke.
6-4. 6 in favor, 4 against. The motion prevails. It is passed and it is referred to Public Safety Committee. I would hope that you take with the message that you heard today on this. It was a well-worthy discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, Commissioner, you got to go. Dan want to come up, and then, I don't know, Senator Mitchell, are you going to take the gavel over here, or Senator Utke going to take that? What do you want to do? Yep, I'll take this with me. Some water. Maybe some water. Should be 4726. You know what I took with me?
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. So up next is Senate File 4726. Senator Hoffman, as soon as you are settled.
I am settled, yes.
So I believe this is the first committee stop for this. So would we like to start with the A3 amendment to get this in the shape that you wanted it?
That is correct. A3 should be in front of you. I move the A3 amendment.
Okay. Senator Mann, would you like to, oh, you get to move it because you're part of the committee. Okay. All in favor of the A3 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, say nay. Okay, now that it is in the order that you would like it in, Senator Hoffman, could you please present 4726?
I will. This bill establishes the DCT as an agency. Remember what we passed last year, and then we did the recodification stuff. The Commissioner, Department of Human Services Commissioner Jody Harpstead is here to give an introduction. Dan Storkamp, who is the Services Director, who you guys have all seen in front of this committee, will also give a talk through the bill. And Carrie Briones, she's here if there's any questions that people have. But with that, I know we have Otter Tail County Human Services. Deb Shostrom, she looks like she's on Zoom land up there, and that's what she got. So with that, Commissioner Harpstead, and you got to get out of here.
I'm fine. Made rearrangements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell and members. Many of you will remember the year I joined the Department of Human Services. Some of the media articles and speeches at the legislature called for the separation of DHS because it had become too big to manage. I appreciate the governor and the legislature giving me a chance to get settled and run the department for a while until I could contribute my own point of view about that, and the time was right to consider reorganizing. I have indeed come to the conclusion that the department is too big to manage, especially when, and perhaps why, the average tenure of DHS commissioners has been only 2 to 3 years for decades. The most popular notion raised in bills by both House and Senate and both parties has been to separate direct care and treatment from the Human Services Policy Administrations, though it should come as no surprise that this governor and lieutenant governor would also want to create a separate Department of Children, Youth, and Families, as 22 other states have done. It's indeed been a challenge for the entire central management team of DHS to move through our days and weeks from childcare shortages to new disability waivers to handling COVID in a statewide hospital system to the opioid epidemic to the Indian Child Welfare Act to sheltering people experiencing homelessness to the constitutional rights of sex offenders. A lot to wrap our minds around.
I believe the reason that the DCT separation has been raised most often is it's the most obvious and was really obvious during the height of the pandemic when our St. Paul employees worked remotely on policy development while our direct care and treatment team went to work every day, serving people in treatment and protecting everyone from the virus. Very different missions requiring different management skills. And so the plan is developed to create a separate direct care and treatment agency reporting to a board, much like the MNsure system is structured, but with a board of experts in behavioral health treatment like other behavioral health hospital systems are overseen in Minnesota. We're currently going through the org chart and deciding which of our employees in each work group will remain in DHS and which will go to children, youth, and families. But DCT has long had its own HR, legal, compliance, and finance functions. So the plan for that separation is essentially moving CEO Marshall Smith from reporting to me to reporting to a board, while shoring up a few functions like HR and communications for whom DCT still relies some on DHS support. We are also fortunate that the plan calls for the continued leadership of CEO Marshall Smith. Marshall started his career as a frontline nurse and developed his leadership skills through a variety of leadership positions in both private and public hospital systems. One unique part of Marshall's leadership is how he's enrolled his team in working to meet the criteria for the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. Normally a corporate award, DCT could be the first state agency in the nation to win the award. At the new DHS, as we're calling it, we're looking forward to separating and sending resources and leaders to the two new agencies in a way that leaves 3 new thriving agencies. Though large organization changes like these always need a few years to settle in, develop new organization teams and processes, and fill in some gaps. We're also fully intending to work closely with our friends and colleagues in our new sister agencies going forward as we work together to tackle the behavioral health crisis with DHS policy and DCT capacity on the one hand, and universal benefit eligibility and enrollment systems across DHS and DCYF on the other hand, for example. As a quick preview, we're doing some early visioning at the new DHS. We're imagining things like supporting all Minnesotans in achieving their full health potential, remaining the #1 state in the nation for older adults and people with disabilities to live, and achieving the original Minnesota vision of mental health parity with physical health as first declared by former Minnesota Senator Paul Wellstone and reinforced by Minnesota Congressman Jim Ramstad. With your support for these separations, I look forward to the time when future governors and boards will have an easier time finding leaders to lead these 3 still large agencies, DHS still having the administration's largest budget, with DCYF probably 3rd or so, and DCT having the 3rd or so largest employee base. And the 3 new leaders will be better able to dive deeper into their areas of responsibility to produce better outcomes for Minnesotans while remaining trustworthy to the people of Minnesota for the use of taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Storkamp, if you would like to proceed, please state your name and title.
Members, Dan Storkamp, Director of Operations, Executive Director for Direct Care and Treatment. I'm going to actually just go through a very quick PowerPoint doing 3 things. 1, you had 2 questions. I'll answer both those questions, why a board and why separation, and 2, what's in the bill, and go through that in 4 different sections. I did want to just mention that the first psychiatric hospital was in St. Peter in 1866, and if anybody gets down there, that's still in operation today. We have operations throughout the state of Minnesota, and as the Commissioner mentioned, we've had some consistent leadership in DCT for several years. We've had our CEO, Marshall Smith, for 8 years, as well as our Medical Executive Director for 8 years as well, and the Commissioner's been around for 5 years. So under that leadership, they really brought forward some consistency in kind of where we're going on different aspects, and has resolved a lot of the operational issues around conditional licenses, as well as the shortage of medical staff. Because of that leadership, they were able to bring in that kind of consistency and to solve problems. And as the Commissioner mentioned, moving away from the day-to-day resolving issues to move to the strategic plan and the Malcolm Baldrige and the continuous improvement as we move forward. So why a board? A board brings that history and that expertise around healthcare and that consistency and leadership across administrations and across executive directors in that process. With the board of 8, you've got consistency that transitions from year to year in that process. In addition, the board provides transparency of DCT programs. Transparency because it's in a public forum that is brought forward. There are very few meetings that are not public when it relates to client data or individual personnel information. But other than that, it's open to the public. There'll be opportunity for the public to be a part of the process, as well as it records the actions that actually occurred. So it's a much more a public forum. So why an agency? Or why DCT is needed? As the commissioner mentioned, there is that difference between what DHS does, which is regulatory, which they're over the body, oversight over us, statewide policy, they're responsible for the continuum of care, and the payer. DCT is providing specific treatment and treatment programs for the tail end of the system, if you will. We are still within a government setting in that process. The language that we've provided, hang on a second. The language that we provided, we actually had an opportunity from the governor's office to share that with all our stakeholders ahead of time. Tribes, unions, counties, and other stakeholders. We got feedback. We made changes and adjusted. Not everything that was requested got put in, but we made an ample effort to try incorporating many of those, and I'll mention a few as we kind of go through. There's 4 sections. I described the bill in 4 different sections, I should say. 1, remember the reviser's bill just moved language that was existing into the new chapter. There are areas that DCT needs to be added into that kind of outlines a state agency. For example, our tribes ask that we be in the government to government section as an agency. We need to be in data practices. We need to be part of the unclassification language. We need to ensure that our review the provide certain protections for people participating in peer review process. We need to participate in the social welfare account. This is the account that our clients use for banking. So it's got to be real critical for those pieces. And we need a special revenue account like we've had with DHS and other agencies, including facility management, our system account for EHR and some of those accounts, gifts, grants, contributions, and a cemetery maintenance. That's one of the unique things about DCT is we actually operate cemeteries in that process. The second section I'll talk about in just a minute, which is really about the board, which is the biggest response that we got from our stakeholders. The third area is the transfer of authority and the responsibility. As I mentioned previously, we're looking to move from January 1 to July 1 of 25. That gives us an alignment with the budget, biennial budget, as well as our union contracts. But we're saying the board should start in January and consult with the commissioner and the governor to bring forward the package as a part of that process, but actually not transferred over until July of 2025. And then there's some technical changes. So let me jump back to the oversight and kind of the structure around, and I've only got a couple more slides here. 1, the governor is appointing the board. The board is going to be over DCT oversight overall, kind of what DCT programs are and kind of how they operate. But their big focus is really about the patient and the patient care. That day-to-day operations is actually moved down to the CEO, who reports on a regular basis to the board, but it's the CEO that's responsible for that day-to-day activities. And then the CEO works with the 5 divisions as well as support services to ensure that delivery of that service and those treatment throughout the program. This does not change. We still have got state and federal requirements. We are still a state agency and have to follow the governor and the MMB processes. We still have to come to the legislature and all of you for the funding and any legislative changes. And the Supreme Court is integral in what we do, as most of our clients are really committed to us from the courts. It is civilly committed in the process. The board itself, as I presented last time, was a 5-member board. We heard from you as well as others that 5-member board was probably just small and we probably needed to expand it. We're proposing a 9-member board, 2 members non-voting, 7 members voting. Of the 7 members, what we heard is 1, we need to have a physician who has behavioral health or a psychiatrist on the board to help support that. A lot of questions about how we could coordinate with the commissioner of DHS. and putting the commissioner on this board would allow for that. Then our experience in the board and hospitals is the same, 2 people. But we've expanded the third group, or the last group here, on members with backgrounds in healthcare administration, behavioral health professions. The tribes asked us to add traditional healers, as well as organized labor. The 2 non-voting members we're bringing forward based on conflicts of interest of staff and of counties. They've got a vested interest in providing or paying for either services through our program or actually serving within our program. So we're bringing forward those 2 as 2 non-voting in that process. So that was a very quick overview of what we did and what's being presented here, and open it up for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one final testifier online.
Deb Shostrom should be on the.
Yes.
Zoom land.
Ms. Dostrom, if you could please proceed.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Senator Hoffman, Chair and Conference Committee members. My name is Deb Shostrom, and I serve as the Director of Otter Tail County Human Services. Thank you for the opportunity to share some comments on behalf of the Association of Minnesota Counties, AMC, the Minnesota Association of County Social Service Administrators, MACTA, and the Minnesota Inter-County Association, MICA. Last session with the determination to separate direct care and treatment, or DCT, from the Department of Human Services, DHS. With that, counties are asking through bills like this Senate File 4726 that as governmental partners with both DHS and DCT, the county's unique perspective should be considered and reflected in the legislation being brought forward. Direct care and treatment identifies as a highly specialized and tightly regulated behavioral health system. Counties greatly appreciate direct care and treatment's focus on providing quality services to the people they serve in their healthcare system. Most importantly, we see direct care and treatment as our state safety net to meet the needs of people with complex needs who are unable to be served in the community. Direct care and treatment is an essential governmental partner to serve those whom private providers cannot or will not serve. Currently, the state's direct care and treatment system remains underdeveloped to address the immediate needs of Minnesota residents. But DCT is not alone in this. There are gaps in availability at many levels of service, and Minnesota's mental health care system needs to be fully built. Today, Minnesota's safety net far too often appears to be hospital emergency rooms, jails, and other inappropriate settings. In 2016, there was a governor's task force on mental health report that identified governance as one of the top issues to be addressed in transforming our mental health care system into one that is more effective, comprehensive, understandable, and accountable. We're hopeful that this DCT transition will assist with that. Minnesota needs DCT, DHS's Behavioral Health Division, and counties to work seamlessly together to support developing our behavioral health continuum of care. Last session, AMC, MACTA, MICA asked that experience in the delivery of behavioral health and care coordination be added to the applicable skills of desired board members. We recognize that it will be important for board members to have healthcare experience. We understand knowledge and experience with behavioral health system is critical to the new agency's success. And counties are uniquely qualified to provide that expertise. And as such, we ask that the executive board member to be appointed by AMC for an individual experienced in the delivery of behavioral health services be a voting member. Over the past several years, I've been working as part of an ongoing group of county human services directors and managers who meet regularly with direct care and treatment staff. We've worked to collaborate. We've made progress in our efforts to improve communication and reduce delays in discharging people from state-operated facilities. We hope that the additional transparency and accountability on the DCT Executive Board will pave the way to even better partnership, both with counties and with DHS and their Behavioral Health Division. DHS remains a key partner in providing services and in developing and supporting community capacity to build out our continuum of care beyond state-operated services. We're hopeful that substantial investment in DCT to expand capacity can be paired with expansion of community-based mental health treatment options to serve people being discharged from state-operated facilities. A voting AMC County member of the Executive Board brings an essential perspective to the leadership at direct care and treatment. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm available for any questions should you have them.
No,
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes the testifiers that we have scheduled for this. I would like to open it up for any questions or amendments. I will also say, as much of a robust conversation as we need to have on anything, but it is also 10 until 5, and we have 4 bills left to go. So if we could just, bear that in mind as we
Madam
move
Chair,
forward.
Madam Chair, if I can interrupt you.
Yes.
Madam Chair, we have this room for Xfinity and beyond, or whatever you would say that. So from this moment on, that's David, I should have said
I'm
that
not
at the
sure
very
everyone
beginning.
wants to stay for Xfinity and beyond. My kids would like to see me at some point tonight. But yes, we do have room past 5, but I was just pointing out the time as we are mindful with our discussions. With that, Senator Rasmussen, I believe I saw your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to move the A2 amendment, and I'm happy to explain the amendment.
Could you please explain that while we pass it out?
Yes, thank you. So, Madam Chair, one of the concerns that I have with this proposed structure for direct care and treatment is that we would have a multi-billion-dollar agency. One of the, I think from the testifier said it would be the 3rd largest agency from number of employees, thousands of employees across the state of Minnesota, that would have a CEO, the individual charged with running and responsible for the agency, not directly accountable to the governor, and also not up for Senate confirmation. And so the A2 amendment maintains the board. There would still be a board that would have responsibility over the agency, but it would ensure that the CEO is accountable to the governor's office, and it also would have to be confirmed by the Minnesota Senate. And I think if we were to not adopt this amendment, this would be unprecedented from a Minnesota government perspective, to have an agency that's this large not have direct political accountability, both to the Minnesota Senate and to the executive branch. And so I would ask for member support on the A2.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you
Chair.
so much, Senator Rasmussen. Senator Hoffman, what do you need?
I need a piece of paper. He gave me one. The page brought us one, and as Senator Rasmussen was talking, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to follow along, and then I realized you want to.
Here it comes.
Cassie.
When
So-
you are ready, if you could please comment.
Senator Rasmussen, let's go back and you, thank you, because there was the concerns. Remember when we were first, and Dan remembers this conversation, because we had talked about, go in and talk about the makeup of this board. And what he had told me, was the makeup of the board, and there's actually more accountability and more transparency than if it was the other way that we were talking. But there still was a but clause there. The but clause was, it's the board deciding the executive director, and there was this layout on this piece. So does this amendment get to that concern you have? And perhaps maybe you and Dan could have that conversation right now. And we're going to be here for a while, because this is a big deal, Madam Chair. Sorry, if you got to go, it's going to be.
Senator Hoffman, I believe, has asked a question of Senator Matthews. Would you care to answer?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm so sorry.
I take that as a high compliment, so thank you. Madam Chair, to the bill author's question, yes, that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that that CEO, who again will be running a multi-billion-dollar agency with thousands of employees, serves at the pleasure of the governor. So there's political accountability there, and also would be required to come up for Senate confirmation. And I think that's very important. And I think, Mr. Chair, if this amendment was adopted, that future CEO would be in front of this committee having to explain his or her credentials as to why they should be confirmed by the Minnesota Senate to lead this very important agency that does very important work on behalf of Minnesotans. We still maintain the board, and so we would still have that structure to be able to pull on the expertise of the individuals that we've talked about. But I think this is an important amendment for accountability.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Senator Hoffman.
What Senator Rasmussen is asking, Dan, have you taken a look at this? Because it's not changing the structure, it's not changing the content of what you're doing. What this is merely saying is, like other executives that get the chief executive officer, direct care and treatment, would fall under the same as public utilities, right? That same kind of accountability being they get conferred by the Senate. Yeah, I pick you, but you get conferred by the Senate, which is kind of standard for everything else we're doing, correct?
Mr. Storkamp, do you have a comment?
Madam Chair, Representative Rasmussen, and members, the board is actually designed to come before the committee and the Senate to be confirmed in that, not a confirmation process, but as with all board members, there's a review by the Senate for that aspect, so that that's where the Senate would have their oversight in this whole process. The board would then select the CEO in that process, and then the CEO would then operate down. So the intent was originally that the board would be the aspect and the authority over this process, and that the Senate would actually, if you will, confirm that board as they move forward with things. So that was the intent.
Thank you for the clarification. Are there any further questions or comments about the amendment? Senator Maye Quade.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this question is for either Senator Hoffman or your testifier. Was there a reason why the structure you have in statute or proposed is the way it is and not this way? I'm just trying to understand why, because I find Senator Rasmussen's arguments compelling, and so I think I just would like to know why we didn't go this route. Is it related to the healthcare services we're providing? I just want to know more.
Mr. Storkamp.
Madam Chair, Representative McQuaid, the whole concept of a board was to follow kind of the hospital and the healthcare system around how to operate a healthcare system as we kind of move forward. It was different than the governor's process for selecting commissioners in that commissioner structure. So it was really intended to move it away from that commissioner structure that could change every 4 years to a board and the operation of a board where they also operate very large systems as well in that process. But it's really that board that was going to be the structure that was going to be providing that oversight in that process, as opposed to a commissioner model. And I think the amendment here kind of mixes the two together.
Thank you. Senator Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I do have concerns about that commissioner changing so frequently when it's such a complex system and department. To have that continuously change on the whim of the Senate makes me very uncomfortable for the care that those patients are going to get. And I would rather have someone up there who is accountable to the board is accountable to us, but they know how the system works, and so that patient care is not disrupted. So I don't love the amendment for that reason.
Thank you, Senator.
Does she like it? She doesn't love it.
Senator Maye Quade.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think what would also be helpful, because I'm now digging back into the recesses of my brain on who the board is. I remember it was a lot of healthcare professionals, so that it's healthcare professionals choosing a leader to direct healthcare versus the Senate or, the executive branch, which we've had some choices for commissioners, right? That we're having somebody who's chosen by healthcare professionals to run the healthcare system. Can you remind us who's on that board?
Mr. Storkamp.
Madam Chair, Senator McQuaid, and members, the board is made up of the medical professional that is a physician or a physician with behavioral health background, or a psychiatrist who deals with that on a daily basis. It also has the commissioner of DHS. It has 2 members that are from a hospital board or a nonprofit board, so you bring in that experience. And then 3 members from backgrounds with healthcare administration, behavioral health, healthcare professionals, traditional healers, or organized labor in that process.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no, Senator Rasmussen. Yeah, Senator Hoffman, did you have any comments before Senator Rasmussen speaks?
I did, and I think what Senator, this is the compelling discussion that we had, and I asked folks to follow up on that. And so what Senator Maye Quade is suggesting and what Senator Rasmussen is suggesting, it makes consistent sense. It doesn't change the structural component of what they're trying to do, but it makes sense on the accountability side. So,
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate the conversation today. And I think the question of governance and accountability over DHS and direct care and treatment is a topic that legislatures have struggled with, frankly, for a long time. And so I think this is a really important piece. But I think one of the key takeaways that I have had from at least observing some of this conversation is that we should not move away from more public accountability. We should move towards it. And I think here it's important to say that we're going to have a multi-billion-dollar agency with thousands of employees that ultimately has a chief executive who does not serve at the pleasure of the governor and would not come to this committee and the Senate for confirmation. Senator Mann brings up a very good point that you don't want a lot of turnover in positions, especially when you have a high-quality executive, and nothing in the A2 amendment would require that. A governor, even if they came in from a different party or another governor comes in, and if they thought that this individual is doing a good job, there's nothing in this amendment that would make them, have to fire that individual. They could retain them, as previous administrations have done. But I think it's so important. This agency does such important work. The people do such important work that chief executive, I think, deserves a level of accountability both to the executive branch and to this legislature, while maintaining the expertise that is brought on by the 7-member board.
With that, Senator Rasmussen moves the A3 amendment. I'm sorry, the A2 amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
Aye.
Nay. Can I
You got
call?
Abler and Omar that were on the screen.
I voted aye.
Can I call division for myself?
I voted nay.
Omar, you voted aye. I'm sorry. Senator Fateh, you voted yea or
No.
nay? You were no. Can I do a raise of hands? The chair would like to call division because that was hard to tell. So everyone that was a yes, if you could please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
I did it by phone? All right.
Everyone that is a no, if you could please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And Fateh said the same thing. We have a tie, and with a tie, the amendment does not pass. Is there any other further discussion on the bill? Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to move the A4 amendment at this time, and I'm happy to explain.
Senator Rasmussen moves the A4 amendment as that is passed out to everyone. If you could please explain it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the A4 amendment, I would say, gets at one of the accountability pieces that I'm most worried about. And because the A2 was not adopted, I think this is a really important piece. One of the key decisions that direct care and treatment will be making under this new construct is what to do with the Minnesota sex offender program. And I think it's really important when you have a program that is so integrally tied to the public safety of Minnesotans, that we have accountability on key decisions that are made within the Minnesota sex offender program. And so within the A4 amendment, because we did not adopt the A2, it would create new accountability and thresholds for both the CEO of Direct Care and Treatment, the Commissioner of Human Services, and the Commissioner of Public Safety to be able to have input on key decisions on when and who should be discharged or moved through the Minnesota sex offender program. I think this is a really important amendment. One of the concerns I have with the current construct of the bill is that we could now have a CEO over Direct Care and Treatment making decisions to move people out of the Minnesota sex offender program who is not accountable to the governor, who is not accountable to the legislature. And so I would ask for members' support.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Senator Hoffman, do you have any response to the A4 amendment?
Madam Chair and members, how would that look? I mean, as we're sitting here, Senator Rasmussen, right now, there are a lot of people in the MSOP program that are living with developmental disabilities that we would say that isn't the appropriate placement for them. They've done their time kind of thing, right? And that the system right now is broken, getting those folks to the support that they need. How does this change what we're currently doing, and would we start to look at the fact that there is some internal work going on. I mean, how would that look different? And maybe that's a Dan-you conversation?
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. And if I might add, I spoke with some of the people at that facility in the interim, and I believe there are over 700 people in that program. And almost no one, once they've gotten in it, has ever been released. So, Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the bill author's question, currently, the Department of Human Services Commissioner, has authority over the Minnesota Sex Offender Program. The commissioner, again, is accountable to both the governor and the legislature. And one of my concerns with this new construct is that effectively, and perhaps by design, we are insulating this CEO who will be making important decisions over the Minnesota Sex Offender Program, who is released, when they are released, into what care settings they're released, that does not have direct accountability to the public. And I have constituents who have been the victims of horrendous crimes committed by individuals who are in the Minnesota Sex Offender Program. And I think we owe it to them that there is accountability. And again, this amendment, the A4 amendment, does not prevent any decisions being made about individuals moving through, being discharged from MSOP. It just is asking that we have people who serve at the pleasure of the governor and are up for confirmation in the Minnesota Senate to be able to sign their name and answer for those decisions.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Senator Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Rasmussen, so if someone is discharged from the program by the CEO, they would require, and if they got a letter that is signed by the director, the chief executive officer of direct care, the commissioner of human services, and the commissioner of public safety, only if a letter is signed by all three, then does that decision get overturned? Is that correct?
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Mann. Yes, that's my understanding with a number of these provisions. It would require the CEO of Direct Care and Treatment and the Commissioner of both Human Services and Public Safety to consent.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen.
Madam Chair.
Senator Mann.
Follow-up question, sorry. And the Commissioner of Public Safety, says Commission of Public Safety. I don't know if that's the same thing as Commissioner of Public Safety, but does that, A, is that the same? And then B, is that, do we think that that person has enough medical knowledge to say whether a person should be in treatment or not?
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Mann. I would say, the Commissioner of Public Safety in and of themselves doesn't likely have the medical expertise, or at least what we've seen in previous holders of that position, to provide direct input on the medical care. But again, they do bring that public safety lens. And I think it's an important piece when we're talking about the Minnesota Sex Offender Program, that we protect members of the public. And I think that's one of the goals and aims of the program. And so this amendment, since we do not have a CEO that is accountable to this legislature nor to the governor, that we do have that accountability in here.
Madam Chair.
Senator Maye Quade.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is one of those things where I don't think that there's disagreement. I wish I knew more about how this worked now so I could understand what it is I'm voting to change, which I think for any future substantive amendments, maybe give them to us ahead of time so we could dig in. Can somebody explain to me what happens now so I can know what would happen later?
Yeah. Madam Chair, yeah, there's this adds three other entities to the SRP and the CAP process at SIR, but we'll get somebody who can answer that question directly.
Can you please state your name and title for the record?
Madam Chair, Committee, my name is Dale Klitsky. I'm the Deputy General Counsel for Direct Care and Treatment.
Thank you. And could you please answer the question about how the patients in there now currently, how many there are, and how a person would currently be released?
Yeah, currently right now in the program we have a little over 700 individuals in there. I believe right now we've fully discharged maybe a little bit over around 20 to 24 currently. Underneath the current process, when an individual wants to reduce their commitment, They have to go through a process where they petition to the SRB. Then the SRB makes their recommendation. That recommendation then goes to the CAP, the Commitment Appeal Panel, and then they make their decisions based on recommendations.
Can you not use acronyms? I'm so sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you. Can you say
the
those out?
Commitment
Thank you.
Appeal Panel is the CAP. SRB is the Special Review Board. Sorry about that. And then from there, the CAP will take into consideration assessments from the treatment, the risk, and then also the commissioner. So how I read this amendment, to me, it adds 2 more layers of individuals to make that opinion final, or to go forward with that reduction in custody.
And I'm going to take Chair's prerogative to ask another question. So I did speak with some of the members in there. They said some of them have been in there for over a decade, is my understanding, and that most of the releases that have happened have been juveniles. And what I have heard from some of the members are that there isn't regular reviews. So their feedback is it is, once you are in the program, it is almost impossible to get out. So for me, I will probably be voting against this because I think we actually already need to make sure that people, this is a hot button topic. And so I think if we add layers, no one wants to be the one that lets a sex offender back out, but there's also really not an effective process in place for them now. And I don't want to add more barriers for people who might have gone through the proper rehabilitation process and are already saying that it is almost impossible for them to get back out. Can you speak to how often they are getting reviewed and why it is that only 24 out of hundreds have ever been released?
I don't have, Madam Chair, Committee, I don't have the specific timeframes in which people have been in there or how long it's taken them to go. I know it's really based on treatment. And so the act of participation in that treatment is a big component of that and success of it. I know I've been with DCT for a year now as a Deputy General Counsel, and I know I think within that time, there's been a discharge of roughly about 6 or 7 full discharge, and a number more, much more on provisional discharge. So I know they're going through the process, but it does take time, and it takes participation within the participants and the clients too.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, Senator Rasmussen would like a final word.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate this discussion, and thank you for your work with MSOP. It's such important work on behalf of Minnesotans and for your entire team for the challenging work that they do. I want to just close by saying that the bill, unless this amendment is adopted, would remove a layer. As we had heard from the agency, the DHS commissioner has ultimate review over whether or not someone is discharged and goes through the system. And if we do not have this, we do not have a commissioner level appointee of the governor, someone who has Senate confirmation, who is able to sign off. And so I agree that this does add more layers. This does add more public accountability. And I think, given the structure that this new agency is going to have with a part-time board overseeing a multi-billion-dollar agency with thousands of employees, with a CEO who's not directly accountable to this Senate nor to the governor's office, that on the highly sensitive, important work that's done in MSOP, that we make sure that there's more accountability. And so I'd ask for member support of the A4, Madam Chair. Thank you for the time to discuss this thoroughly.
Okay. I think I am going to ask for a roll call so that we don't have the same thing as last time. So can we have a roll call, please? Roll call requested, roll call granted.
George, you should
If you could please do the roll call.
later.
Senator Hoffman?
No, I was just going to say that there's a misunderstanding of how the layers are in there, but we can talk, Senator, because what we're doing with this bill is we're end up laying this over, so. we're-
I'm on a
It's
hearing.
working, so. Go ahead, you asked
All
for a
right.
roll call, Madam Chair.
Chair Mitchell,
No.
Chair Hoffman,
No.
Vice Chair Fate,
No.
Lead Abler,
Absolutely yes.
Senator
Does that
Mann,
count too?
Senator Matthews,
Yes.
Senator Maye Quade, Senator Rasmussen, Senator Utke, Senator Wickland. Madam Chair, that concludes the roll call.
And with 6 nays and 4 yays, the nays have it. The motion fails. Is there any other discussion on Senate File 4726? Okay, with that, Senator Maye Quade moves to pass it as amended.
That's my bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right, you moved it. I keep forgetting.
It's okay,
I don't usually have people testifying when I'm in my other committee that
You're
are
good.
actually on the committee.
You're good. I think, just some clarification, I thought we were laying this one over, but it's saying this one needs to go to State and Local Government and Veterans Committee, and that, I'm getting
Yes.
yeses. But it's going to end up coming back to us. So Senate File, I move Senate File 4726 be recommended to pass as amended and referred to State and Local Government and Veterans Committee.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. No. The ayes have it. It is on its way, and the motion as amended has passed and will move to State and Local Government and Veterans.
Thank
Next.
you. Madam Chair, let's go back to Senate File 4864. Matt Burdick is here. This should be quick. It's language removal from the Minnesota statute concerning expired human services reports to the legislature. So,
Mr. Burdick, hopefully this is easy and we can keep this quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Matt Burdick with the Department of Human Services, knocking on wood for that comment. But yes, very excited to testify on this bill. For background for the committee, this is the result of some legislation that we worked on several years ago with a previous chair, Senator Benson, which is really what I like to call the DHS Staff Mental Wellness Act. And what this does is it provides for a regular ability for the sunsetting of ongoing legislative reports that may no longer have value or utility to the legislature or the agency. And we saw a proliferation of legislative reports. The department had been completing about 100 or more legislative reports on an annual basis, many of which were on topics that were maybe no longer relevant to the legislature. And so what this legislation did is it requires us to compile a list of those reports, send that report to the chairs and leads of the relevant committees on an annual basis, and then we provide that report in the previous session. So the bill before you reflects a report we issued in January of 2023. And that's to give the legislature the opportunity to weigh in. If those reports are not extended, they do expire per the statute, and so this bill is reflecting the expiration of those reports that were reported to you back the previous January.
Thank you so much. Sounds like some fairly straightforward cleanup language. With that, do any committee members have any questions or anything else? Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Mr. Burdick. I'm looking at the Integrated Care for High-Risk Pregnant Women, which was a report that had to be provided in January of 2021, and then every 2 years after that talked about maternal substance use disorder, and just wanted to see if I could get some commentary on why that report is being phased out.
Mr. Burdick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Rasmussen. This was a pilot project that we had, the legislature established, I believe, back in 2015. The reason that language appears more recently is we made some updates to that program. We provide that information to the legislature either on request basis, we provide information on our website, so we didn't think that the legislative report in many of these instances, and this included, had the same value that it did. And I would say just generally, that's something we're trying to do a better job of, is just being transparent in our day-to-day work so that we don't have to take that added layer of getting a legislative report put together, going through all the layers of DHS leadership, which requires a lot of time and attention of very busy folks. We can provide that information in a more seamless way now.
Thank you, Mr. Burdick. Okay, seeing no other questions. Senator Hoffman, do you have any final comments?
No, I think it's also tracked in Title V. When you look at maternal child health stuff, I think that stuff is also with the Department of Health on that. But no, I just want to see Senate File 4864 be recommended to pass and referred to Health and Human Services Committee. Coming to you, Senator Wickland. What? Okay, it is.
Okay. We have a motion before us. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. With that, the motion passes, and Senate File 486 will be re-referred to Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Matthew.
Next up, we have Senate File 4398. Senator Hoffman, at your convenience, could you please proceed with an explanation of the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. This is the DCT policy bill. This was the, Carrie Briones will be up here to, remember we talked about the setting side of it, so section 1 through 17. There's a proposal that allows testing of the bloodborne pathogens in the non-secure DCT program. That's something we needed to do. You guys can see that currently those settings are able to obtain court order to require patients to submit bloodborne pathogen tests following a potential exposure. Pretty cut forward, go on to section 18. When we passed the statute last session, the name of the intended organization for membership was listed incorrectly. And so what we did is it's a technical change, and the fix on that is to listed that member as a priority admissions task force. So that's basically it. Carrie Briones is here to go a little more in depth if you guys want to go past 7 o'clock.
Does anyone need a further explanation of this bill? Okay. Seeing no additional questions or comments, I really appreciate you being here today, but we are going to lay this over for possible inclusion.
That is correct.
Thank you so much. Next on our list is Senate File 4580. Senator Hoffman, at your convenience, if you could please explain the bill.
Thank you. I got Valerie Cook, who's coming up here, and I think Misty Okerlund is she? Yes. Hey, how are you, Val? Is she online, or is she coming here? This is a nursing facilities transparency increased related organization transitions and duplicative nursing facility rate legislative report. We're repealing that. There should be an A2 amendment sitting up there someplace.
Yes, Senator Hoffman moves the A2 amendment. If you could kindly explain that, or as it is passed out, or is this the first stop? Mm-hmm. This is the first stop, so this gets it in order.
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right.
We'll stand by until everyone has it.
Thank you. Everybody got it? Those are just technical fixes if you look at.
Okay, everyone now has the amendment. Again, this is the first stop for this bill. They are technical fixes to get it in the order the author would like. All in favor of the A2 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The amendment passes. Now, as it is, with Senate File 4580 as amended, can you please explain your bill? Senator Hoffman.
Absolutely, Madam Chair and members. Remember, this is the agency bill. This is the Senate File 4580 is the Department of Human Services. It's their agency bill, and it brings the clarity to the state's understanding of how nursing home operators use Medicaid reimbursement dollars. This bill requires the nursing facilities owners and operators to report the related party transactions on annual costs at reports submitted to the Department of Human Services. And that right now the cost report currently collects information on related party transactions only to the extent that involve costs that have a rate impact under the value-based reimbursement. So if you want a question about value-based reimbursement, Senator Maye Quade and Senator Rasmussen would be more than happy to talk for 2 hours about that. But I think what you want to do is also look at this bill repeals the biennial evaluation report on VBR. That's duplicative of the rate study that was authorized during last year's session, Madam Chair. And so this policy-only bill provides the department with the more information. Val Cook is here from the Department of Human Services, and she'll go over the bill in more detail if you would like. So Val Cook.
Ms. Cook, could you give us a quick synopsis of what the bill says?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Valerie Cook. I'm Division Director for Nursing Facility Rates and Policy at DHS. I will try to be very brief. Just looking at Section 1, touching on things that Senator Hoffman didn't mention, is that it just gives us authority to collect both an audited financial statement and a trial balance rather than just one or the other. Secondly, just point out that this would be effective August 1st of 2024. And so this requirement would be added to the cost report that is for the period ending September 30th, 2024. Just to point out, one new authority that this does provide for us is to collect information about leases of real property in nursing facilities. While we have a line on our cost report for that information, we don't use it for value-based reimbursement, and so we have not done the work of auditing that and collecting information about that, so this would strengthen that piece of it. I won't mention again that it repeals the duplicate study for the rate study, but I just want to point out a couple things what the bill does not do. It does not change how we calculate reimbursement rates in any way. This is only just collecting additional information. Existing law already directs us as to how to deal with related party transactions under VBR, and we're not changing that. We are just strengthening that information. We are, why are we bringing forth this bill is because we are trying to align with the federal initiative about more transparency about ownership of nursing facility. And while the federal effort is about licensing, this bill is about reimbursement and getting some clarity on how financial transactions are being used for reimbursement purposes here in Minnesota. And it's also going to give us better information when we are asked about the financial status of nursing facilities. At this point, we really can't answer that question in a good way. And we are hopeful that this authority will help us provide you as legislators and other interested parties a better financial picture of the nursing homes in Minnesota.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Okerlund, would you state your name and title for the record and anything that you have to add?
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'm Misty Okerlund, board member of Elder Voice Advocates, and I lead their Disability Voice Advocates Initiative. We are a nonprofit dedicated to protecting the rights and improving the quality of care for elders and adults with disabilities. Elder Voice Advocates strongly supports SF 4580 and has provided a more detailed statement which is in your packets. We are alarmed by a troubling trend where nursing homes are hiding their true profits by channeling money to related businesses, all the while neglecting quality of care to residents. Families tell us horrific stories of needless suffering and death as a result of undertraining, understaffing, poor training, and lax management. In 2022, the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center received over 77,500 allegations of maltreatment, up from 70,400 in 2021. A national study released just last week found that 63% of nursing homes profits were funneled to related parties through inflated prices. This deceptive practice involves nursing homes overpaying for goods and services from related companies, thus hiding profits. The study highlights that once a nursing home adopts a related party to provide real estate and management services, total spending increases by 20.4% for real estate and by 24.6% for management. If these hidden profits were spent on hiring more staff and improving staff training, we would see a significant improvement in the quality of care. Current practices, however, allow nursing homes to prioritize profits over people. In conclusion, the policy changes in SF 4580 are necessary to improve the quality of care of nursing home residents by ensuring transparency and accountability of the nursing home businesses in Minnesota. Failure to act perpetuates a cycle of substandard care and financial exploitation of Medicaid funds. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any further questions or comments on this bill? Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question for fiscal staff. On Senate File 4580, which repeals a legislative report, and then on the previous bill, Senate File 4864, that also repealed a number of reports, was there any fiscal note? Are we getting any money back from the Department of Human Services?
Good catch.
Anyone who cares to answer?
Good catch.
Or
Capture time.
go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, Senator Rasmussen, so on the prior bill, I believe it was SF 4864, my understanding is all of those bills, all of those reports are actually expired. So if you restored those, there would be no savings associated with that. So for those in particular, I'm unclear on the bill before the committee right now, 4580. I haven't had it confirmed from DHS regarding whether or not there would be a cost associated with the repeal of that report, or excuse me, a savings.
Thank you. Senator Rasmussen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just, for the department listening, we oftentimes will have fiscal notes when these reports are added that are costs. And so I would hope that if some of these legislative reports are being repealed and some of these requirements are going away, that perhaps we can know the savings that we're getting from the Department of Human Services for this committee.
Savings is always good. Okay, thank you for the question. Are there any other questions?
There's no savings. I wanted to be savings. It was a great, I love that. You too, I love what you just did there because I was like, I turned around and I said, Elise, I want the savings. She said, great, there's no savings on that. So to his point, but we can follow up. Nice job.
Senator Hoffman, do you have any final comments on the bill?
No, we're recommended to pass. Is this thing going to the floor?
It's going to general orders.
Oh my God, go figure that. It took me a month to get something on the general orders. I should have brought cake today. That would be Senate File 4580 be recommended to pass the general orders.
Senator Hoffman is making a recommendation as amended, yeah, I was going to add that. So 4580 as amended, be recommended to pass and put on general orders. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. With that, Senate File 4580 has passed as amended and will go to general orders. Thank you so much. And our final bill of the evening, yes, it is the final one, yay. 4399, Senator Hoffman, at your convenience.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had Val let me know that the VBR report expires in 2025 too, Senator Rasmussen. So I think we'll look at all that too. So thank you, Madam Chair and members. Senate File 4399. It clarifies there's a DHS amendment. I have not seen that DHS amendment. Christy Grom, you going to come down and hang out? I do know that it clarifies some of the SUD provisions, and it adds provisions related to the Community First Services and Supports, CFSS, and aligns with the congratulations, DHS, on the recently approved state plan agreements with CMS. Are you going to give us more information about that wonderful thing of CFSS, Christy? The other thing she's going to go through is the disability form simplification, remote reassessments, technology first update, and that should be, I think what we're doing with this bill after we get the A2 amendment around to people is we're going to lay this over for possible, all this is getting laid over for possible.
Yes, Senator Hoffman. I also have an A2 amendment for you.
That's the one. That's the one I just rattled off. So I moved the A2 amendment.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions on the A2 amendment? This is the first stop for this. Okay. With that said, all in favor of the A2 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. The A2 amendment passes. Please describe your bill and proceed with testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. This is the DHS policy bill that makes clarifications, technical and policy changes to the disability services, deaf and hard of hearing services, and the substance use disorder services areas of law. Christy Grom is here, and she's going to briefly go from a 10,000-foot high mark about what we've been talking about all since last year. And then this will get laid over, and we're going to mark this thing up in our markup time anyway in 2 weeks. So with that, Christy Grom.
Ms. Braun, please proceed. State your name and title for the record. You know the drill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christy Grom with the Department of Human Services. So yes, I will do a very, very brief walkthrough and happy to answer any questions. So sections 2 and 21 are really just making some modifications to disability services forms. So they're related to DWRS and the form that counties use to input information from a person's support plan to create a rate, and also the form that is used when a provider wants to terminate someone's services. We're wanting to streamline those forms, make it simpler, make sure that all counties are using the same form to make it easier on the provider community. Those are really important documents, but we want to make it more streamlined for the providers. Section 18 is related to personal care assistance and community first services and supports. So this is just allowing remote reassessments for PCA and CFSS. This change already, flexibility already exists for waiver services. That was made a couple of years ago. So this is just aligning with that a person, if they so choose, would like a remote reassessment, they can do that for PCA. Section 19 makes some updates to the technology first policy statements, which Chair Hoffman and others were huge champions of many years ago, well, 2019 maybe. And there's one slight glitch in these policy statements related to technology first where it doesn't align with the other sections. And so this provision would just add a technical clarification to conform that statement with the others, stating that people should be offered opportunities at the outset for assistive technology and remote services, really trying to make sure that we're utilizing those options for people. Sections 1, 10, 20, and 38 relate to minimum wage protections for people with disabilities. This is a proposal that's familiar to this committee. We've done some day services reforms over the years, have been working for a long time with state partners. We had a task force that looked at the use of special minimum wages and phasing them out, made a recommendation to do so. Indeed, vocational rehabilitation services also have phased out this practice, and so this change would just make sure that people that with disabilities under our programs get at least the minimum wage or the prevailing minimum wage in their area. Sections 22 to 37 sounds like a really big change because it's making modifications to an entire act. So this is the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services Act. It hasn't been updated in about a decade. So it's really just in need of some modernization. So changing the name of Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services Division at DHS to include deaf-blind, to be inclusive of that community as well. Requiring that services are linguistically affirmative in addition to culturally affirmative, and then just some technical and clarifying changes. And then lastly, I won't go into detail, sections 3 through 9 and 11 through 17 are related to substance use disorder. Mostly technical corrections, but some policy changes, maybe lots of cross-reference updates. Maybe one that I'll mention that I think is, a couple I'll mention that I think are a little bit more substantive. One is making a change related to SUD medically monitored intensive inpatient services. So there's one treatment program that provides this really unique, important level of care in our continuum. And that's at a 3.7 level for American Society of Addiction Medicine, but currently our implementation plan doesn't have that level of care. And so in order for them to enroll in the SUD demonstration, they would have to enroll as a different level of care than they currently provide, which creates some issues with their managed care contracts. And so we're allowing them a little bit of extra time until we get that 3.7 level of care in the system. And then another more substantive change is requiring, for example, SUD treatment providers to provide opioid education to individuals when they are entering treatment right at the beginning and not waiting until after their comprehensive assessment is complete. So I will conclude on that note and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Does anyone have any questions or comments for this? Oh, I saw a hand for a second. I was just fixing hair. Okay. With that, Senator Why are we pointing at each other?
He's pointing at me because I think we're laying this one over for,
Inclusion.
for inclusion. And do you have an amendment? I don't have it. The only one I had on here was the A2.
Senator Aki, are you offering an amendment?
Yes. Madam Chair, I would offer the A1 amendment.
Thank you. Could we please pass out the A1 amendment? As this gets passed around, Senator Aki, could you please describe the A1 amendment?
Madam Chair, the A1 amendment, you'll see just deletes 4 sections within the bill, sections 1, 10, 20, and 38, and they all have to do with the 14C. We've had this conversation numerous times, and eliminating it, and this current language prohibits the expansion or the continuation on August 1st of 2026 and to be fully eliminated by August 1st of 2028. And actually, the expansion on August 1st of 2026, it just wouldn't enroll any more members. This would be a tremendous loss. We've seen what the providers have done over time. Wasn't that many years ago we heard there were 7,000 people participating. Now we're down to 3,200, but I don't care if it's 200 or 300. It is so important to those individuals that we must stand up for them and protect their work. So that with this amendment, that's what this does. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Aki. Senator Hoffman, have you had a chance to look at the A1 amendment, and do you offer any comments?
No, Madam Chair, I do. I'm really, let me be very clear. I'm the only person in this room who has successfully taken an organization out of a special min wage. There's a plan to do it, right? When you give me a plan that's just dates and no real plan, it's not a plan. I have said over and over and over again, bring us a plan, right? Dates aren't a plan. I want to see words like Griffin and Hammis. Instead of using competitive wages, you want to use those customized, right? You want to do that thing. There's a whole process to do this. And I see this as a friendly amendment because this gets the conversation back to where it needs to be, Madam Chair. And with that, I accept Senator Aki's as a friendly amendment because I want a plan. I don't want dates. I want a plan. And if we want to spend time, I can spend hours talking about the latest Cato Institute conversation that I just had regarding how you look at people with disabilities are twice as likely to be unemployed, period. Period. Not about any discussion about what special min or not special min. Special min was established 84 years ago in federal law that's in there, right? And I've consistently said, bring me a plan. And to this date, Madam Chair, I don't have a plan sitting in front of my desk. So I'm going to say to you, I take this as a friendly amendment. And with that, I accept the A1 amendment.
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. Senator Maye Quade.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Hoffman. I totally understand that you want a plan. Just from a pure values point of view, my bill is to remove the sub-minimum wage, and so I won't be voting in favor of the amendment because I think this is really important work that we do, but I hear what you're saying, and I think we should get a plan together if this amendment does go on, because I think this is really important work for our committee.
Are there any other comments? With that, all in favor of the A1?
I gotta vote here. Go ahead.
All in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
I believe the ayes have it.
They do, by one. Thank you.
Any other questions on Senate File 4399 as amended at this time? With that, Senator Hoffman moves,
No, we're just laying it over.
or I'm sorry, Senate File 4399 will be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Seeing no other matters before us, this meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, I think before, and Madam Chair, just, David will send out just what's coming up. I mean, this is deadline time, and we're doing well. Thank you, everyone.